Today on Frank's World TV, an important announcement about the Node.js event in DC and crowdfunding for education. Hello and welcome back to this episode of Frank's World TV. I'm your host, Frank Lavinia. Due to a scheduling conflict, we had to change the date of the DC Node.js event. It was unfortunately, or cleverly named, Nodevember, but because now we pushed it back to December, we had to change the name to Node December. Good thing it wasn't switched back to January. Accordingly, I also had to redo the graphics as well as my favorite trailer. The event is now scheduled for December 7th in DC at 1776. So just take a look at this, scan this QR code, or click the link below for more information.
Intermission time. Time that stretch you've been wanting.
And now, on with the show.
As a startup technology evangelist, I get to work with a lot of bright entrepreneurs with some really good ideas. Here's a really good idea: taking the power of crowdfunding, which we've seen really come to the fore on websites like Kickstarter, and applying that to education. That is basically the story behind EdBacker. So check out EdBacker in this week's edition of Startup Pitch Perfect.
I want to tell a quick story, and it actually has to do with AASA. I was at a dinner for Mark, of course I forget his name, what do I call it, Mark Edwards. He was the superintendent of the year, and he was implementing one-to-one. It's where President Obama recently went in North Carolina. It's Mooresville, North Carolina. And he was speaking about the one-to-one implementation, and after he had kind of gone through all the stuff about iPads and technology, and he said some great things about technology. They didn't make an investment in iPads, they made an investment in kids. And then it just spurred a discussion around, what does that mean? And they asked Dan Dominici, who's the executive director of AASA, he said, what is the superintendent's role in this? And I loved what he said. I don't even know if he knows that I'm quoting him, so check it. I said, the role of a superintendent is that we must be champion for our students. If not us, then who? And that really resonated with me because my background is I used to be a teacher, and then I was an assistant principal in Southern California. I started a company, sold that to Pearson, started another company. I am married to this space. And everything that I've done and everything that you do, the reason you're here today is because you are a champion for kids. All of these programs that you're bringing, whether it be a field trip or a piece of technology, it's about advocating for your students and bringing them the resources that maybe the government can't fund, but they need to have a successful education, to have a successful life. And so that quote spurred a new way of thinking in my head about the things that we do at EdBacker. We're about creating champions. We're about creating those champions through technology, and we do that a couple ways. We are leveraging what's called crowdfunding. So what we do different than probably other fundraisers is we're using technology to bring that champion to the living room, to the laptop, and the person in California, because there is a huge outreach that you guys have, this huge network of people through parents and teachers and your students, and that's called crowdfunding. So you take a little bit from a lot of people, and you can get all of the things that you need to get done at your school. And so that's what we're going to learn to do today. There's lots of pieces to that. And the reason that we've brought together Microsoft and the reason we brought together the city is we want to tap in to that power, because there is power in there. And the key is getting that message out there to the people. It's not the 5% of people that give. It's everybody that has $5, 632,000 of them that can give $5 to make these things happen, and that's what we're hoping to do tonight. Traditional product fundraising, selling cookies, and I'll tell you a quick story, things like that. There's nothing wrong with those things. I think they have an appropriate time and place, but I think they're also extremely inefficient. I had a Boy Scout actually come to my door a couple weeks ago, and he was selling, and I admittedly buy his popcorn every year. But it was more about supporting him than buying the product. And so I finally got frustrated, and I asked him a little bit about this whole process. And he said to me, he's like, "How much do you have to raise?" He's like, "I have to raise $8,000. I was like, "Okay." I was like, "That's a lot of popcorn." He's like, "Yep." And I was like, "How much do you actually need?" And he's like, "I need $1,600. So the rest of the money goes to a lot of other places, not directly to the cause, right? And so that's extremely inefficient. So he has to go knock on doors after school to do that in order to get to his $8,000 when all he really needs is $1,600, right? So we want to take out the middle and ask people to just give. Don't buy things they don't want. Although I had someone argue with me, I like buying wrapping paper. That's awesome. If you do, that's great. But if you don't and rather give, that's the kind of thing we want to tap into. So the opportunity, we're going to talk a little bit about social media tonight. Outreach through your networks. Twitter and Facebook are these phenomena now that even grandparents have Facebook pages. But leveraging that power and showing you how to do that, that's a huge component of our site. There's some research that shows that if that aggregated social net worth, the greater chance and actually the more money you can raise online. So we're going to walk through some components of that. The rewards, or perks as we call them, are really up to you. In this particular case. So everything from a $5 Twitter shout out, which is very easy and cheap and inexpensive to do, to higher level things where, if you're doing, I know Makita and crew, you guys are talking about doing a field trip, to naming that particular package after that donor at a higher dollar amount.
That's it for this episode of Frank's World TV. Today actually is Halloween, and be careful out there trick-or-treating, and you just never know what might even pop up around you or in the studio. Well, you hear that?